Dr. Bindiya. It's such a pleasure to have you with me again. You are an expert in this field, and I wanted to have you on this series because when we've talked before, your in-depth knowledge of leptin resistance and other factors that are getting in the way of people reaching their health goals, is very insightful, and you have a great way of explaining it. And so with this series, this Deja Vu series, I'm trying to help people get unstuck. So can you help us today to understand leptin resistance and how that could keep somebody stuck?
Well, first of all, Lisa, thank you for having me again. It's always a wonderful pleasure of mine to be here and share some knowledge with you. So, yeah, let's talk about leptin. So, leptin is a lesser known hormone that not many people are aware of. We always hear about testosterone and progesterone and some other hormones, but insulin as well, but leptin not many people know about. And leptin is actually a very, very important hormone for many people. It is basically produced by our fat cells, and it is a hormone that communicates with our brain. It's essentially our satiety hormone, or a hormone that lets us and our body know if we are full. Okay. But more important, it also lets our body know if we have enough fuel stored in our body to burn enough calories at a normal rate, right? So this is why it's important. So in other words, it lets us know, do we need to eat more? Do we need to eat less? Can we stop eating? And what's going on? And a lot of times, Lisa, when this communication is off, it impacts other things. It impacts insulin. It impacts our weight. It impacts our other hormones like our thyroids, and they all kind of go together. This is why this hormone is so important. And often when we talk about leptin, sometimes we'll talk about other hormones like ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. Okay. But
Mhm.
essentially, what I want people to know about is there is a hormone out there that can become awry and dysregulated over time that can impact your metabolism.
So we always think, it's how much I'm eating or what I'm eating. And I've really come to realize it's not the calories in, calories out model, and that different foods affect us differently. Do different foods affect our leptin levels?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad you're bringing this up because, many of us, over the years have been dieting, yo-yo dieting, right? We've tried all these trends and, intermittent fasting and you name it, keto, and I don't even know, Atkins and blah, blah, blah over the years, low fat, low carb, whatever. Um, and over time that impacts our metabolism whether we realize it or not. So when we are in starvation mode, or our body thinks we're in starvation mode, and essentially when you're on a diet, right, a short term goal, it's not a lifestyle change, that impacts your metabolism negatively. And so yes, it does matter what you're eating, and it does matter if you're getting enough calories or not. And this is why, Lisa, so many people hit a weight loss stall or a weight loss plateau after they've tried things for a while because their body is getting the wrong signaling and messaging.
Well, it's just so frustrating, right? Like when we hit that plateau and we think I'm going to the gym more, I'm eating less, which that still is, as much as we can say it's not calories in, calories out. I think that's so ingrained in us that people think, but I'm doing an extra 45 minutes at the gym and I've cut my calories down to 1500 and now I've hit this plateau and they don't know why.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because the brain is getting the wrong signaling, right? We have to kind of go back to our ancestors, right? When we were in our caveman period, cavewoman period, it was feast and famine. It was that's kind of how it worked, right? We were not eating all the time. We would eat food, we would gather our food and we would eat it, we would store it, we would save it. And that's what our body would do, right? Our body wasn't sure when we would get fed again because food wasn't readily available, right? And so that's kind of the same concept. If your body is unsure when the next meal is going to be, it's going to store that fat instead of burning it, right? And so the conversation really is about how can we reset our metabolism, and that's what learning about leptin and how it impacts you specifically can really do in a positive way.
Well, I know I felt like I had poor willpower for many years, and I realized that it was the foods I ate. Certain foods, particularly carbs and sugar, made me overeat. Like I
Hmm.
didn't feel satiated. And my
Hmm.
husband would say, "You have no willpower." And I'm thinking, I have willpower in every area of my life. How could I not have willpower here? And it was really uncontrollable.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many, at least there's so many different things to that, right? Like, we'll just use carbs as an example, right? Like, let's just start off with this. Like, again, culturally, majority of us have grew up in the diet world of, I wouldn't even say diet, it's the world of let's eat cereal and orange juice for breakfast. Like, we grew up on that, right? Fruit Loops and a glass of orange juice. Well, essentially, that's just sugar. That's straight up sugar, and that's carbohydrates. And so what that does is it then, um you're not, number one, you're not full. Okay, so you're not full because you're not getting fiber, you're not getting protein. So then 2 hours later, your blood sugars are doing this number, they're not stable. So then you're hungry again 2 hours later, right? And this is because, this is again why, or to your earlier questions, it does matter the type of foods you put into your body. Okay, because things like carbohydrates, it really it really starts triggering an imbalance of leptin and ghrelin. So you're hungrier again, you're not full, and then your insulin production is spiking a lot earlier than it should, making you want to eat more and quicker. And this again promotes weight gain, and it promotes other unhealthy habits.
So for me, I found that eating more frequently, those 6 small meals a day, was actually worse. And maybe because I wasn't eating, maybe if I tried eating a hard-boiled egg every 2 hours or 6 times a day, I would have been fine. But of course, whenever I had the insulin spike, and especially 6 times a day, the more
Oh yeah.
frequently I was spiking my insulin, the hungrier I was and the
Hmm.
more I was consuming.
Exactly. That you are so on it, because this is exactly why, like, again, over the years we've heard different things. Oh, you should eat 6 small meals a day because it regulates your metabolism, and it's good for you. Well, we've also learned eating 6 small meals a day, and if it's not the right type of food, what you're doing is actually worsening your insulin and your blood sugar levels, right? And that's actually bad. This is why I encourage people to eat the right type of foods, getting a lot more fiber, a lot more vegetables. That keeps you full, a lot of protein, right? Keeps your hunger at bay, and it lets you go longer. And when you're eating every 4 to 6 hours and you've got enough time, your body's able to digest its food. Your blood sugars are a lot more balanced. You're not hungry as often. And guess what? Overall, that is what's actually revving up your metabolism, because your stomach and your body and your metabolism doesn't have to work as hard, right? Because it's getting the food that it's needing, but it's slowly burning appropriately. And again, from a blood sugars perspective, it's not just doing this spike number every 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, in my observation, this is only my observation, but I've lived many years on the planet and I've watched some of the trends, and
Yeah.
I remember the big push to eating more meals more
Hmm.
frequently, touting that it would boost our metabolism. And what I have witnessed is that we have more incidences now of type 2 diabetes and obesity since we started promoting 6 small meals a day or eating more frequently.
Actually, you know what, Lisa, I'm so glad you brought that up, because the data is, again, we can talk about this, because this is, again, clearly I remember these conversations with my family, and it was the 1990s, and we were talking about low fat everything. It was low fat milk, it was, or skim milk at the time, or it was low fat this, and it was diet this, diet that, and I'm not gonna lie, that's what that was what society, media, everybody was saying is what you should do. That's what the celebrities are doing. That's what, we were told fat was bad. And because of that time, guess what we were doing? We were replacing the healthy fats, or the fats. And I remember, Lisa, specifically thinking to myself, oh my God, I can't eat olives because olives are bad. And I can't eat avocados because avocados are bad, and they have a lot of fat in it. And so instead, what you're doing is you're filling up on carbs and sugar and processed things, fake sugars, sucralose, Splenda, aspartame, the junk, you name it. What we were doing during that time is filling our bodies with crap, essentially, and high processed carbohydrate, refined sugar stuff. And diabetes increased during that time. There's a direct correlation between when people were on the low fat phase and the number of diabetes that spiked during that time, because we were doing the wrong things for our bodies. And guess what? We're going to keep learning new things. A study will come out tomorrow and it's going to say something different and new. But one thing that has been consistent over the years is we have learned that protein is important for our muscles, for our cells, for our body. And we need to be eating a good amount of protein every single day to burn and fuel our metabolism. So that is one thing that I will say has probably been consistent in the data over the years as trends come and go.
There's so much I could say about this. I just love listening to you. I had written an ebook for my clients called From Confusion to Clarity, because what I found in working with people is they're listening to those trends, right? They're listening to what the media is and the latest white paper and the latest, and they're not intuiting what their body is saying. And one client in particular, you'll appreciate this, nearly flew across the table at me when I talked about breakfast. The only reason it's the most important meal of the day is because you're breaking your fast. It's
Yeah.
how you break your fast is important, and when you break your fast is important, which is different for all people. It doesn't mean you have to break fast as soon as you roll out of bed. I can't do
Yes.
that. I will
Yeah.
eat 10 times more in a day if I eat too early. And she nearly flew across the table at me at this lecture. And she said, "What do you mean I don't need to eat breakfast in the morning?" I said, "I don't eat anything until closer to 11 or 12, like closer to noon. And that's just what I've determined for me. And my blood sugar does best when I don't eat past 6 p.m. But she said, "I eat breakfast every day because I was told I have to."
I know. I know.
He said, "I don't even feel good when I eat breakfast, but I do it anyways."
Mhm.
So part of this conversation is I want people to feel in their body that leptin and ghrelin, right? When are you overeating? When do you not feel satiated? And tell us how to sense this. Like how do we know when we're overeating, when we might have leptin resistance?
So, so many different symptoms and signs if you think you're having leptin resistance. First of all, it can be, let's talk about this. It can go back to the fact that you're eating every 2 hours. You're constantly hungry. Like you're always like, "Oh my God, I'm thinking about food. I need to eat. Like I just ate an hour ago and I'm eating." Also portion size, right? Like you're overeating. You just had a normal portion size, but you're like, I need more food, right? That's a leptin problem. The other thing that we notice with having leptin problem is you have inability to lose weight, right? No matter what you do, you're like, I'm exercising, I'm over exercising, I'm under eating, and I'm not losing weight. You're fatigued, you're sluggish, you're tired, you have low energy. You have hypothyroidism, but it's worsening. It's not getting better. Your blood sugars are not constant. So there's so many different things that are kind of giving you warning signs that you could have leptin. Now, one of the things, if you're listening to this conversation and you're like, you know what? That sounds like me. What I want you to do, seriously, guys, is go on my website and take a free quiz. It'll tell you, and it's just 11 questions. It'll kind of give you an idea of, is my leptin off, right? Because you could be leptin resistant, leptin sensitive, or leptin clear. And so take this 11 question quiz, and it's just go to my website. It's drbindiamd.com/quiz. And you'll get an idea of, is my leptin off? Now, leptin is important because leptin really does is also impacted by ghrelin. So let's talk a little bit about ghrelin. I know I've been talking about leptin a lot, but ghrelin is its sister hormone. Ghrelin lets us know if we are hungry. Okay. So every time we get hungry, our ghrelin will go up. And when we are full, ghrelin goes down and leptin goes up. They're kind of inverse related. When we are full and we just had a meal, we just had hopefully a healthy, wonderful salad lunch with protein and lots of good stuff. We are full and our ghrelin will go down. But if we're hungry, our ghrelin will go up. And that's kind of how the difference between those two work. But it's important to kind of differentiate the difference, because they both have an important role independently and together. Ghrelin is actually made in the stomach, um, and ghrelin levels are usually lower in people that are overweight or have obesity. So this is why they're constantly hungry, and they're looking for food all the time, right? So kind of different. And this is why, like gastric bypass surgery really helps reduce the stomach size, and it improves ghrelin levels. And that's why that's important. So yeah.
Interesting. Now, how does this relate to kids? I know we're talking about adults right now, and some of us would think like adult onset diabetes is how we used to refer to type 2 diabetes, except that we're seeing, you know, more and more type 2 diabetes, or at least insulin resistance in kids. What about leptin resistance or ghrelin levels in kids?
So, such an important conversation, because there are some genetic factors, unfortunately, that kids have that can predispose them to being overweight and obesity. And it's having leptin resistance very early on. And this is why there are some kids who tend to have, tend to be maybe normal weight for a little bit, and then all of a sudden shoot up and have high levels of, or I should say, end up being overweight very quickly. It's usually because majority of the time there is a leptin resistance genetic abnormality that is happening, that is kind of surfacing. So we tend to see this. Um, there's also beliefs that maybe overfeeding a child at infancy, giving them too much milk or formula, whatever at the time, can kind of cause this dysregulation very early on, right? And as a mom of three kids, I totally get it. You want to feed your kids, but when we're overfeeding our kids and we're not listening to the baby's cues of if they're full or not, their body's telling us, right? They're telling us. But if we feel like they're underfed, or maybe at daycare or nannies or parents are just not aware, then we're also triggering a confusion in their little bodies, and again starting to dysregulate their leptin very early on.
Well, that's my fear with the frequency of feeding, right? The snacks every 2 hours, the thinking we have to eat 6 small meals a day. And as a mom, we do want to make sure our kids are fed. And so I was always handing my kids a package of something, right? So a Nutri-Grain bar, a Nature Valley bar, and of course, now all of those things I look back with some regret that I fed those. But we're looking for convenience foods, packaged foods, and we're feeding them frequently and possibly too frequently.
So, let's talk about this too, because this is also very, very important. And I really want to make this distinguished too. Remember, kids' metabolism are completely different than adult metabolisms. Okay. So, there's a difference between overfeeding them and then not feeding them enough, right? So, realistically, let's talk about this. If a child is telling you they're hungry, they probably are hungry. They've got growth spurts and they're going through different things. Yeah, some kids may eat out of boredom, but very early on, they don't understand the concept of eating out of boredom. We're teaching them those behaviors. Understand that, right? If a child is coming to you and they're hungry, you want to feed them. They're hungry. They're telling you, they're experiencing it. They're not lying. There's no negative learned behaviors about food. Hopefully early on, right? Hopefully, maybe by the time they get to about 10 years old, maybe they've learned, okay, well, mom, if I eat my dinner, mom will spend more time with me, or whatever. They learned different negative associations, and we're not going to talk about that, right? Emotional eating, whatever. But early on, if a child is telling you they're hungry, they probably are. So eating every few hours for a child is completely normal and is okay. Children should not be intermittent fasting or should be going without long periods of not eating, except from the time of dinner to breakfast. That is normal. By all means, all pediatricians will sit down and tell you that is completely normal. Ideally, we do want our children to eat breakfast, unless they just, majority of us, like, don't want to eat breakfast. We don't feel good eating breakfast. Sometimes your kids will tell you that. And that's okay if they're skipping a little breakfast. But that's also because they know they're going to get snack at school. They're going to get lunch. They're going to get an afternoon snack. And a lot of times they end up the bulk of their calories between the snacks and their lunches. So as a parent, we need to make sure that we're cognizant of that, and we're packing appropriate healthy snacks, making sure they're getting fruit, they're getting vegetables, they're getting fiber, they're getting a lot of protein in the bulk of the time that they are actually hungry. They're burning more calories, they're more energetic, they're playful. So we have to be mindful of all of these things again, but understanding we can't say children should not eat every 2 hours because we should not eat every 2 hours. Yes, I agree. We should not be eating every 2 hours. Our blood sugars, our metabolism is completely different, but a child a little bit different. We need to be aware of that.
So my concern is still with the convenience foods and the packaged foods and the amount of sugar. Um, they're getting far more sugar than I think any generation prior.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's because of marketing and convenience, and parents are busy, and parents don't want to think about it. They don't have time to sit down and cut vegetables and celery sticks and carrots, right? Like it's we live in a society full of convenience. Parents are going home, picking them up from school, taking them straight to the drive-through. That's what they're eating these days. It's not very pleasant, but hopefully parents listening to this are like, you know what, I've got to make these changes for my children because I don't want them to have diabetes. I don't want them to be obese. I don't want them to have any issues. But it does start with you as the parent. You have to lead by example. If you're sneaking in the drive through and they see the fries in your car, they're going to call you out. You know what I mean? So it does start with you. Your behaviors start with you, and the kids will follow. So small changes go a long way.
Yeah. So how do we go about, or when would you go about having a child's blood sugar tested, or what would be the concerns that you would test for their leptin levels or their ghrelin?
So leptin is a blood test that I tend to do. I don't tend to do it on my pediatric patients unless we think that they literally have has been a significant weight gain within like a 6 month or a year period, and they're off the curve now, and before they weren't. Like there's got to be something that triggers something that's saying now they're obese, right? Now they're significantly overweight. Again, because kids will go through different growth spurts as well. Ghrelin, we don't test because unfortunately there is no good test for ghrelin at this time. Now, maybe a year or two from now, maybe six from now, that may change, but right now there is no blood test for that. But things that you want to pay attention to is behavioral problems. Okay, if your child's having behavioral problems, is having a little bit more anxious, hyperactivity, if they tell you they're tired, fatigued all the time, if they tell you if they're passing out or something like that, we want to check their blood sugars because there could be more of a blood sugar problem than a leptin problem, right? Especially early on. And when it comes to blood sugars, you'll also be aware of, are they peeing too much? Are they drinking too much water? So there's different signs that may want you to check for blood sugars and diabetes type 1, type 2 very early on. And I think that's very important because that is probably more something that we do, but it's not a traditional test. It's not every pediatrician or every doctor is checking that. There's got to be something that's triggering it. Remember, getting blood from a child is not very pleasant. It's very traumatic for them. So, let's not traumatize them any more than we have to.
Right, right. And I bring it up because in working with adults for so many years, I found that they were creating a separate meal for themselves. and and I was kind of shocked that adults, mostly moms, were saying, well, I'm getting healthy, but I cook a separate meal for myself because there's no way my family will eat this healthy and my kids won't eat this healthy. And so I want this to be a family conversation.
Correct.
We're having, the discussion right now about New Year's resolutions. And the reason I called this deja vu is because so many of us set the same resolution year after year. The definition of insanity is, expecting something to be different, but doing nothing different.
Exactly. Exactly.
So we have to figure out what these underlying factors are. And you have a lot of information here about leptin. I love that you have a quiz that people can take, and insulin resistance, leptin resistance, helping people to understand what's going on underneath. It's not just about willpower. It's not the latest diet or changing a diet. It's figuring out what's going on in someone's body.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And the biggest thing that I want people to be aware of is start having conversations with your family about getting healthy together. And I think that is key because especially like a mom and the clients, patients that I see, when you start making changes as a family, you're more likely to stick together and keep up with the changes versus just making your children get healthy or you're trying to get healthy. The temptations are always going to be around. So if you're making these changes together, it's going to be lasting. Even if your significant other is not on board and you're still bringing junk food in the house, you're still bringing junk food in the house. You're going to get tempted to eat it. So, you need to make changes together and you will see amazing results and improvements.
Yes. Well, this was something that afflicted me. So this was a conversation that I wanted to add to this whole series because my husband can eat whatever he wants, but I cannot. And
Yeah,
some people metabolize carbs, other people do not
right.
metabolize them very well. And to just look at another member of your family and think that they need to change, let me tell you that my husband, by eating healthier, has gotten healthy, even though he didn't have weight to lose. There's other health improvements that come from
Yes.
eating healthier.
Yes, of course. Of
You
course.
know, gracefully aging is one of them.
Yes. Yes. We all want to do that.
Yes. Yes. So as we wrap up this segment on the Deja Vu series, you're talking to people who have probably been stuck. You know, a lot of people have been stuck and they feel like they're in a vicious cycle.
Mhm.
What advice would you give them or inspiration can you give them to make lasting change this year?
So, let's be realistic. Start small. You don't have to change everything tomorrow. Small baby steps go a very, very long way. So, pick one thing, and that may just be this week, guys. I'm going to be drinking a lot of water. I'm just going to keep up with my water intake today. Maybe once you've got that down, you're comfortable doing it. Maybe the whole family's on board. You guys are all taking your water bottles to work, school, etc. Maybe the next change you make is we are going to just eat more vegetables. That's all you're going to do. I'm going to eat more vegetables and make sure that breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we have some sort of vegetables. We've got snacks of vegetables. That's it. That's an easy change, right? Not too hard. Maybe the week after you decide, you know what? We're no longer going to eat those Doritos. We're just going to stop buying the Doritos. It's baby steps, guys. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be stressful. And small steps go a long way. So that's what I encourage that everybody do.
I love that. That's really what it takes to be a lasting change, to be a lifestyle change. It is one step at a time. And I remember when we ditched the Doritos around here. That was a tough one for us, but we got rid of those about 10 years ago. So if
Yeah,
we can do it, everyone can do it.
I agree. And there may be some unhappy people, let's be honest. But what I will say is you guys will notice some great improvements.
So I want everyone to check out your quiz at Dr. Bindiya MD /quiz. We'll make sure that we put that in the email in the show notes. And I'll probably add that right here to the video because that is one step everyone can take. Take the quiz on leptin resistance. Reach out to Dr. Bindiya. You can connect to her on all of her social channels. Reach out to the people who have the information, not your sister, not your next door neighbor, not your mom. Every
Right.
person is different, and what worked for your sister, your next door neighbor, and your mom may not work for you. And this continues the confusion and continues keeping you stuck. So you need to find what works for you. And that's why we're bringing these experts together. Dr.
Wonderful.
Bindia, thank you so much for taking the time, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It was wonderful to be back.
Until next time, farewell.